We are live on a Thursday evening. Welcome everybody to the Truth Proof live stream. And hello, Paul.
How you doing, Les? You all right?
Yeah, we're not too bad tonight. Yeah.
Excellent. And it's cooled down a bit, hasn't it? We're just feeling it a little bit of a nip in the air. Everything's changed. I don't know whether we're going to get some kind of Indian summer, but it's cold at the moment.
Just nice for me is this temperature. Just nice.
Oh, you're all this morning. It's too hot, aren't you? When you sat there.
Yeah, I did notice a little bit of a chill out there. So I don't know what. Is this all around the country, this weather then, Paul?
I don't know, mate. I know that we went on cliffs last night and it was cold. And we actually got about 5 to 8 seconds of something filmed, first time in months. So I'm quite pleased with that. So, we'll show either a few frame grabs or we'll show it all on Sunday. And for those people that say we never show, I just need to do a recap before we bring Chris on. And thanks, Alison, for moderating tonight. We said we were going to show some photographs on Sunday, or a photograph.
Yeah.
And I got a little bit of sticking comments because somebody said, "Oh, he's shown photographs and hasn't shown them." Well, the person who sent us them normally comes in the chat, and I'm all waiting for permission. Well, we've got permission, so we will show them on Sunday. Just try not to be so negative. Not you, Les. But,
and now looking forward to seeing the footage that you'd got from last night as well.
It was so interesting. There was nothing doing. Nice, clear night. Bit of broken cloud, but really, really nice, crisp, clear night. Turned away to Flasks. I think I was first person to go to the Flask, get something. And there were Pete, Linny, and there's Ian there, and they come towards me. I just looked up and they were there. It was just like somebody had sprinkled pepper on sky. That sounds stupid in a certain area, and there were about 8 of them. Literally just banged on. Shouted them. I know Ian got about 3 or 4 seconds of it on his camera, because Ian and Jeremy linked up with phone and we could see it. I hadn't even looked at mine yet. I think I probably got about 8 seconds because I'd seen them a short time, a few seconds before. But brilliant.
Yeah.
But let's jump to tonight because I'm really looking forward to talking to Chris. But before we do that, Les,
I'm just going to say one thing, Chris. Tell everybody who's in the stream tonight that Chris is only available for about an hour and a half. So he'll probably be gone before 8:30. So if you've got any questions coming in, just don't leave them while the last minute. Is the key thing tonight.
And aim some questions at me and Les as well for last half hour if we get that far. And I'm sure we will, guys. I know we will. But let's have a look. We've got Fort Mine, Ian Slater, Sober Carper, Karen Behrman, Welshman, Big Bird. Let's have a look. Stuart Gibbons, Mag Sue. I know Linny's in because I saw it, but I can't see anymore. John Doe, Tony Worrell, Dragonborn. Good to see you, Dragonborn. Dragonborn, your questions. I scrolled through other night. I couldn't see them. If they come up, they'll get asked because I know what a brilliant supporter of Truth Proof you are. Deb Shaw, Hezo, Rivington Pike. Let's have a look. Alison Buttle, obviously, doing moderating for us. Thanks, Alison. Diane Farrell, nickname. Simon Riley, as we've just said. Kevin Evers, good to see you, Kevin, and good luck with your dad's conference on Saturday. Let's have a look. Steph. Let's have a look. Yeah. And tell your dad afterwards if he wants to do some kind of Kevin Evers. Tell your dad afterwards if he wants to do some kind of recap of the conference. We can do that in a few weeks' time. Michael Armstrong, Steve T, his nickname, and we're going to have to stop people. So Ivan Stead, Pete will be in, Ian Linney, Mrs. Linney probably be in. Let's go to Fortian.
Yeah. So I'll be back with questions then later on in the show. I'll disappear, Paul, and we'll bring Chris on.
Brilliant. Thank you, Les. How are you doing, Chris?
Not bad, Paul. How's it going?
Yeah, great to see you. Yeah, it's brilliant. We've got 130 people in so far, Chris. And for those that don't know, and I'm sure they will because you've been on Truth Proof twice, Chris Meek, it says it all there. Scottish paranormal researcher, podcaster, and thoroughly all-round boots on the guy kind of man, which is what I like because we're going to get into that in a moment anyway. But it's just great to have you here. And I know we've only got like less than an hour and a half now. We've got an hour and 25 minutes. But what's been happening, Chris?
Yeah, just well, apart from life in general, trying to just keep plodding on, keep looking as much as we can. You know what it's like. Just talking there about you're talking about the coldness this morning. Out with the dog this morning, first frost I've seen so far. So
really,
yeah. So I mean, what I've been up to recently, you see, obviously that's what you've got named in tonight's show. Been up to Beinn MacDuibh. I'm no expert in Beinn MacDuibh, but it does interest me in regards to the stories that past days gone by, and I think obviously in the future we're looking to do another kind of expedition up there at some point, see what we can find.
Absolutely. Do you know something, Chris? If I was in Scotland, close to you, forget Bempton, forget East Yorkshire, because that would be the place. I think that is probably one of the most unusual places in the world, without doubt. And I don't mean forget Bempton because there's nothing happening there, but obviously it'd be your place of choice, because the stories that they just go back through time. It's just incredible, and I'm fascinated by that location. I would have loved to got up there this year, but it's looking like spring really for us, isn't it?
Yeah, for next year we'll get up. I mean, that's now there'll probably be snow starting up there now as well. You can camp up in the winter, but it's no fun up at 3,500, 4,000 feet and freezing cold.
No, absolutely.
I mean, I was up there, gone past a few weeks back, as I discussed with you, and it was 20 degrees down at Aviemore, and up the mountain it was just probably just over freezing. So it was like 1 degree, 2 degrees, something like that. So it's cold up the mountain when you're up there. You got a bit of wind in there as well. It can make it a bit uncomfortable. But as you said, strange place. The thing with it as well, it's so isolated in the middle of nowhere as well. It's right in the Cairngorm National Park. So it's no as if it's a place where you can just regularly go and investigate and walk out your back door and be there in 2 minutes. You know what I mean? It's you've got Bempton around the corner for you, not too far for you. I've got the Bathgate Hills here, but you got a lot of phenomena over in the past. But I'm the same as yourself. If I stayed closer to the mountains, I'd be up there more. For me, it's probably about a 2.5 3 hour drive, and then a 4 hour hike up the mountain.
yeah. So when we go, it's going to be a 3.5 4.5 hour hike to get there, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's even starting from. So when you drive up to the top kind of plateau where the car park is, because you can get a car park right up at the ski resort, you're still a 4 hour walk to the top of the mountain for there, 3.5 4 hour roughly.
So I mean, I want to get into a few accounts of what's occurred at Ben MacDuibh, but before we do, and I'll just sort of spring this one on you out of the blue, really. Just give us a description of the dog you took with you, and what it does, its behaviour, why you don't let it off the lead as much as you would like to, because it will come into the story later. So tell us about the dog.
So I'll go a wee bit first. We kind of starting off. So when we went up to just do a wee bit overnight camp up in Ben MacDuibh, as I said, it's right up on top of one of the plateaus before you just get to the summit. So it's a good hike in, so you need to take everything with you to get up there. And a lot of mountaineers go up there and stuff like that, you know what I mean? But this time of year it's getting a bit colder, so you see less people up there. So my dog's a husky, and she has got a high prey drive. So if you let her off the lead, I do let her off the lead now and again, and she will chase deer, squirrels, rabbits, anything she can chase, she'll chase. And even what she does
is she carry on chasing, Chris? I
mean, when I let her off the lead, I go up the Bathgate Hills, and I only do this in the morning sometimes, and I'll let her off at a place called it's Witch Craig, it's called, and there's no any like sheep or that about there, so she won't get to the sheep. To give you an idea, when I walk past fields of sheep, she will be totally pulling to get into it. She'll be walking on 2 hind legs so she can see over the fence of the sheep. And she'll be trying to get to them. So I let her off the lead, and she's got a tracker on her. So I know if she chases a deer where she is, and she eventually comes back to me. All right. So I tend not to let her off like all the time, because it's a good natured dog and stuff like that, but she'll just chase things. If you didn't have her tracker on her, you would probably go back to your car or go home. But which eventually does come back to you. You can see her. So what else she does as well, so she'll go for anything that moves in regards to like birds. She's actually caught sparrows before. She's that good. She catches like really small birds and things like that. But what she does do is on most walks I go down the road, and she'll just jump into undergrowth, about a metre and a half into undergrowth, and she'll pull a mouse out of her shrew. And it's amazing to see how she does it. It's almost like you see like one of the kind of Arctic foxes diving into snow.
That's
the same way she does it, and she pulls like a mouse out. It's just crazy. So that will kind of come apart in a bit of the story later on. I mean, do you want me to go into the bit of the story first, or do you want me to talk about just some of the...
You do it in whatever order you want. I just wanted an outline of this dog because of its behaviour later on.
Yeah.
So you can take it whatever pace you want, Chris.
We can talk about some of the stories first. I mean, there's loads of stories about Ben MacDuibh. I won't remember them all. I mean, I'm not an expert in Ben MacDuibh, but I've got a couple of the main stories. If you've not heard of the story before, or the stories up there. So the Ben MacDuibb's the second highest mountain in Scotland. It's not far off the kind of same height as Ben Nevis. It's quite high up. As I say, it's a good arduous walk to get in there. And through years, before it came a bit more busier with the ski resort up there was just a lot of mountaineers up there. Some of the famous mountaineers that you might actually know, Alistair Crowley was a mountaineer who used to go there as well back in the day. And he'd be a member of the actual kind of mountaineering club or whatever. And his actual house was based, the one that was on the banks of Loch Ness.
Yeah.
Isn't too far for there as a crow flies as well. I mean, it's not too far. Anyway, digress for that. So, paint a picture. There was a Professor Norman Colley, and this story only got relayed 20 odd years after it happened because he didn't relay it. It was one of the ones where happens this time. People have a experience, have a story, they keep it to themselves until maybe at such times they feel they can actually express it or tell it.
Yeah.
So it was the same with him. He was a prominent mountaineer. As I said, he was a professor. He worked at one of the universities down in London. And so he was a mountaineer. He was one of the members of the kind of the Cairngorm climbing club or whatever it was, or the mountaineering club for up there. Been in the mountain numerous times. Logical guy, logical mind. Climbing up the mountain, and a mist fog came in, right? And this happens quite a lot there. Like reading the stories, you'll find that that they just get an instant kind of weather event where it could be a nice clear day, and then you'll just get like a mist kind of swarming and coming in. And sometimes they go, sometimes they stay. So he was on the mountain himself, up at the summit, and this kind of mist came in, and he could hear footsteps, basically footsteps, like walking through the Ben MacDuibh's. It's and as a mountain, it's like quite a lot of stone, boulders, granite, quartz, right? So it's like it's total granite, quartz, and things like that right across it. So it's like it's made of that solid rock with loads of disparaged rocks everywhere. So you can hear something kind of walking through.
So the rocks clacking together and
towards him. And him thinking it was going to be another mountaineer. So he was still kind of waiting up there. And this is, I mean, from at the base, you're a good 6-7 miles away, plus the elevation point, right? And so he hears this walking towards him, and basically he gets this intense fear. Gets an intense fear in the mountain. This is the first kind of story it was relayed from, and he basically just had this intense fear that something was coming upon him, and he ran halfway or most of the way down the mountain. This story was relayed later on. I think it was 1925. It was relayed afterwards. It happened in 1891, and I know this was only footsteps he heard coming towards him, but it was apparently relayed to people later on that it was in the Cairngorm Mountain Club that it was actually like a large grey figure that was coming towards him.
Yeah.
And for a man of that kind of logic thinking, being a scientist and stuff like that, he said he would never ever go back up there himself again. And he said, I don't know what it is. He's one of his statements, the final statement he said is, I don't know what it is, goes, but there's something very queer about the summit of Ben MacDuibh.
Yeah, and you would think, I mean, that probably, I don't know, messed with his mind quite a lot, because logically what he experienced shouldn't exist, really, should it? And there's a lot of people that have said, come up with explanations that it's their own footsteps, that they can hear the echo or the reverberation. But there's stories out there, Chris, which you might get to some of them, where people have actually been camping. So they're actually in their tents and they've heard the footsteps.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, so broke into you. Have you any more to add to the professor?
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, that was that one. I mean, it's a kind of short story for what he relayed, but the prominent thing about that story, and for this man telling it, he was a prominent kind of mountaineer, regarded as one of the best in his day at the time and stuff like that. I mean, quite a well-to-do figure, always a professor at university as well and stuff like that. So he wasn't prone to make fanciful kind of stories up or anything like that. And this scared him. So he ran halfway down the mountain, or most of the way down the mountain, which isn't really an easy feat in any sense if you actually seen it. So that was one story. And there was another story. There's another few stories I'm going to kind of relay. There was a guy called Peter Densham, who was an RAF pilot. And then after the war, or about no long after the war, he worked in forestry. And these guys that stayed in that kind of area, they would kind of double up different jobs. So he would sometimes be working mountain rescue and stuff like that, and things like that. And I mean, back in the day, there wasn't as much people frequenting the mountains and stuff as there is now. You would get mountain rescue, but he would obviously go up and he'd frequent the mountains, and there'd be climbers, and he was basically like a mountaineer climber. He'd be up there frequenting the mountains quite a lot, and he scorned at people who kind of thought, like, what is this thing, the grey man of Ben MacDuibh, or the stories and stuff like that. It would force people to run off Ben MacDuibh towards Lurcher's Crag. So Lurcher's Crag is basically like a kind of cliff face. It's not too far on the way down to Ben MacDuibh. And where people are potentially fell to their death at some points and things like that, right? So he was relating, like, what is this thing that's making these people run off the mountain to their death and stuff like that. So he kind of scorned at it and kind of made joke of it. So he said he was up there on a clear day when this kind of mist came in, and it was like nobody else in the mountain. They never seen anybody else who's gone up there, never seen anybody past anybody, anything like that. As I said, back in the days, there wasn't as much people on the mountain. So he was up the mountain, this kind of mist enveloped the summit. And so he was up there, which happens because obviously you get cloud cover coming in and stuff like that. Happened to me when I was up there, which I'll relay when we go through the story. So he started getting this strange feeling. And he said it almost felt like a pressure on the back of his neck. Like a pressure on the back of his neck. And it was like cold. He said it was actually, obviously it was cold in the mountain, but he said it was a really, really strange feeling. I started getting this pressure on the back of my neck. And then I could hear what he kind of thought was footsteps. And he was still thinking, and he was trying to rationalise. And he said, he said in the kind of comments, he said, at this point I had no fear, and I was trying to work out what the noise was. And before I knew it, I was running down the mountain. Right? Running down the mountain for like fear his life for some reason, towards Lurcher's Crag, where he said I couldn't stop myself. He said
so towards the place where other people have lost their lives.
Yeah. But he said I was running towards Lurcher's Crag, where I eventually had to just divert myself. It was almost like I was getting pushed towards that. Right? I don't know if that was just maybe I'm talking about the momentum, I'm running towards it, but he managed to veer himself off. And he said he never stopped until he got to the other side of the loch, right? So the loch down next to it's called Loch Morlock, which it's a good 7 miles away for the summit, and the elevation gone down as well. So he never seen anything, right? But he experienced something like the Oz factor, as like you hear in a number of different cases. He wasn't the type of person, regardless, he was the type of person that would basically get scared over nothing. I mean, he was, as I said, he scorned at people for having these experiences and stuff like that. And he'd been in the mountain, numerous mountains, other times when there's been mist and stuff like that. So it just wasn't that.
So this really turned his mind inside out, kind of thing. It threw him.
Totally, but he has two experiences, right? This is the first experiences he has, and he's quite a rational guy. They said he was in the RAF as well. He was a pilot, and then there was another story he had. So it was Peter Densham and another guy called Richard Ferreri, and the two of them were in the mountain. There was supposed to be a plane had crashed somewhere over the mountain or in that neck of the woods in the Cairngorms, large area. So they were up near the mountain, and they were looking for this down plane. And they eventually kind of thought, right, I think it's been a false alarm. It's no crashed here, or they couldn't see nothing. Quite a clear day. And they were up near the mountain, so they just thought they would kind of go to the summit to get a better vantage point and view and stuff like that. So it was him and this other guy, Richard Ferrer. So they were up on the mountain and near the summit. So if you're ever at the summit basically has got it's a big boulder cairn, and it's got a trig point on top of the boulder cairn. And round about the summit, it's like a plateau, and then there's loads of cairns that people have built for shelter. So there's you can imagine like a round stone wall, and it's maybe about 3 meters in diameter. You get a lot of them just for people get shelter and stuff.
To break from the wind and the
totally. So he said he was up there, and then same again, the mist enveloped, came into the area, and his friend was he said he was roughly 10, 15 meters away from him, just at another cairn, just sitting down. And it was this mist enveloped him. And he said his friend was having a conversation with somebody, right? And he went to join the conversation. So he went down, met his friend to join the conversation. They were having this conversation with somebody. And it's almost like they snapped out it and there was nobody there, right? And they couldn't relay what the conversation was, but it was almost like they were having some type of conversation with something on the mountain. And I mean, if you follow like Sasquatch things and everything like that across the world, you get things like mind speak. I'm not saying it's that. I'm just saying that this is 1945. He's relaying this story, right? So, and he's almost saying it's like some intelligence or whatever it was, but they were adamant they were having some. In fact, they were having a conversation with something,
but they can't remember the details of what they were talking about. No,
they snapped out it. And then when he brought it back up to the guy at a later date, the guy couldn't remember it. But he says, like, so Peter Densham's experience was that the mountain, there's something more than a thing. It's like almost like a psychic type thing or a metaphysical type thing. That was his take on it, because he said that he'd been up the mountain like numerous times over the space of 10 years. He stayed in the vicinity and he was up and down there all the time. He only had the 2 experiences, but he said it was like a really strange feeling when the first time with the extreme fear, and then the other time where it was almost like some type of communication was taking place, which they snapped out it and didn't know what they were doing. I mean, and people put this down to sometimes, or maybe it's just because of the altitude, and it's not that high. It's like in terms of kind of mountains, it's for the UK it is. But over the world, it's like 3,500, 4,000 feet. So strange tales. I mean, this is like this guy, and then gone for the same guy, Richard Ferrer. He basically had another person that relayed a story to him, but this person basically remained nameless. So I want to put their name to the story. But so these stories that I'm relaying, they were in different areas. So they were in, for example, just before we go any further, they're in like the Scotsman and stuff like that. They're in climbing magazines. Affleck Gray, who wrote the book The Big Grey Man, I recommend to read it if you've not read it before.
I looked at it today. I'm gonna order that book, and I do agree.
It's really good. It's a really good book, and he made a point of talking to everybody, apart from obviously people who are dead now and stuff like that. He made a point of talking to everybody who had an experience.
Yeah.
So he had some type of dossier on all the experiences, and he made a point to actually go and talk to everybody. Even at some point, he went across to other countries because they knew somebody had a story.
Yeah.
So, and he would try and get in contact with them, and then he'd go there to talk, get the story.
Can you imagine, Chris, in today with the internet,
Yeah,
and the kind of cross-pollination of information? You're the man to pick up this mantle, Chris, honestly. But there's nobody better placed than you because the stories are out there, and this guy's trying to trace people in other countries, other parts of the world, probably doing it via letter, and I don't know
that's
how.
it. Yeah, back it was in the mid-90s and stuff. Oh no, he was. I mean, the book came out in the mid-90s.
Yeah.
But he would have been doing that for numerous years, and before him. So he was like a man well renowned for being a mountaineer and basically like walking in the Cairngorms and stuff like that. And he was like worked in forestry and things, and he was well kind of renowned, respected guy.
But he'd been bit by this bug, hadn't he? He wanted to find out. Yeah.
So he'd kind of he started off with a guy that that he had got a lot of his inspiration off in regards to the fauna and the wildlife and stuff like that in the Cairngorms. Yeah. And it started with this. I can't remember the guy's name now; it escapes me. But he started with the kind of stories, and then it went on to kind of Affleck Gray, and then Affleck Gray went and started like hunting down the stories and then kind of searching it. But going back to the Richard Ferrer, so his story, the one where the actual the mind speak or some kind of communication thing, and that was with Peter Densham as well. The two of them had it together. He said a friend relayed to him who he respected, but he wouldn't relay who it was. Yeah. And he said it was a January. He was spending, which had been cold. I mean, he was spending a January night up in Ben MacDuibh on the cairn. So he would have been staying in a cairn somewhere, like a tent or whatever else. And he said he was up there, and he couldn't get his mind right. He said like it took him, for some reason, it took him a good while to actually try and settle his mind. For some reason, his mind was racing with loads of different stuff. He said it was almost like there was something trying to take over his mind. He said that's what it felt like. And
kind of like it's some outside forces infiltrating him.
Yeah, that's it. It was some kind of superior intelligence. That's the way he described it, right? So he said that he was in his tent. It was a moonlit night, and he had this, obviously his mind kind of racing back and forth, and eventually kind of settled his mind down, and he tried to go to sleep, and he got up during the night, and he could see something standing outside his tent. But before he got up, before he actually looked to see, he had this intense fear, right? So he woke up as if he was frozen to the ground, he said, as if he would have been frozen anyway. It was January up in the mountains. So he said he felt like a hunted animal. That's what he woke up. He woke up, and that's the intense fear he felt. And we've all probably had that before at some point in our lives. And so you could see outside the tent that there was like some kind of shadow at the tent, right? And so he waited until this thing kind of moved away, and he unzipped the tent. And what he seen was, what he relayed, he said he could see basically a large figure staggering down the hill, right? And he got to the point where actually he said it had short brown hair, right? Short brown hair, a disproportionate sized head, a large head, but bigger than it kind of would have been, a wide neck, very, very, he even went to the point, so he must have had good detail of this. He said he even seen it had really, really wide shoulders that went down into a kind of thinner waist, and he could tell it was male. He didn't say he seen genitalia, but he could tell it was male, but the build of it, this thing. And he said, he actually put it down to like, it was like 20 foot or something like the height of it, right? Which sounds like ridiculous, right? But he even got to the point in the morning when he managed to be brave enough to leave his tent in the morning, when this thing disappeared down the mountain. He got up in the morning and he paced. There was like, he could see it in the moonlight standing next to like a boulder, because it's a big boulder field. There's boulders everywhere, right? and he could see it standing next to a boulder in the moonlight, and he watched it. So he paced the distance to where it was first, and he paced it 3 times to the distance, and then he went back, and he went back to his tent, and he kneeled down to where he could see this thing against the boulder, and he went back again, and he put his like ice axe at the boulder where this thing was, and then he measured it. He reckoned it was either between, he was quite precise in this, it was between 24 and 30 feet. That's what he said, and he even took an actual a bit off it for actually being indented into the snow or something like that as well. But he said it was like this thing was massive for whatever it was.
It sounds absolutely incredible, doesn't it? And people be going, no, 24, 30 feet, no chance.
It sounds crazy.
But it does, but when you listen to some of the stories that come out of America and Alaska, and they talk about these things being 15 and 20 feet tall.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. And we're in a place here, Ben MacDuibh, where we know it gets footfall, but in the winter it's pretty sparse, the footfall it gets. And I don't want to cut into your story here, but what would you, if this were a natural living sentient creature, what would it eat? Because the calorie intake would be absolutely off the scale.
Yeah.
So it can't be really. I don't mean it's not real.
Yeah.
I don't mean there's no reality to it, but it can't be something that, I don't know, like a deer or just some kind of natural living, breathing mammal. It's
totally. No, I agree with you totally, because it's like you would see, I mean, these things walking about, they were like 20 foot or 30 foot, or it's crazy to say. But I mean, the guy was that disturbed with it. In the morning, he said he felt sick. He felt sick with I don't know if it was maybe the nerves, the adrenaline, whatever, but it actually took time for him to subside the sickness feeling he had. And then he actually went to the point.
Do you think this is fearing for his life, Chris?
No, I don't know, because the thing was, it disappeared, obviously, once he seen it walking away. But he just said that with the experience, it made him feel ill the next day. It made him feel sick anyway. And then he waited till he feel better before he actually walked back down the mountain again. But before he did that, as I said, he paced it out a number of times, and he measured the distance of where he thought this thing was against the boulder. And he actually went down to the point where he was, obviously the line of sight, where he was at the time, to all that. And he said it was between 24 and 30 feet. I mean, that's what he relayed. I mean, it sounds crazy, you know what I mean? But it's
and he described it as having short brown fur, you know, because we're talking about the big grey man. Do you think the grey comes from the mist that it's seen? I mean, around
probably. I mean that's the thing. You think where the big grey man does, it comes from the stories of the mist and obviously the spectre of the Brocken, which we could talk about in a wee minute. But if you look at accounts in Australia, from
the
Yowie sightings, they're grey as well. They're no. I mean, most sightings you get of Yowies, like they're mostly like grey haired and things like that.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of the time, like grey skinned, grey haired, they're like kind of blackened skin with grey hair, and that's what they look like. But it's probably because of the mist, the big grey man. That's where it got the kind of thing. But that's where, going back to the one of the kind of first accounts with Professor Norman Colley. He relayed to somebody else. The first thing he relayed, it was mainly just the footsteps and the intense fear. But he actually relayed that to somebody that it was actually a grey figure. This grey thing came with mist. The other thing as well, where that, I mean, it's just he must have seen that to actually say had shortish brown hair. That's what he said. Shortish brown hair. And then saying it had a thick, because like when he actually relayed that to Peter Densham, and he was trying to say, well, nah, maybe it's the other guy, Richard Ferreira, he was trying to actually rationalise it, saying that you've probably just seen a hiker walking back down the hill maybe at night, and he's had like a thick scarf on and this and that. But he says no, he was adamant. He said that it was, but I find it interesting the fact that these people are going to this extreme to actually measure stuff, check it out, to reinforce what they've seen for a bit of evidence. And like the one we talked about earlier on in regards to the before we came on, the shelter stone stories. So there's a thing called the Shelter Stone, which it's just down the back of Beinn MacDuibh. It's not too far away from Beinn MacDuibh. It's in a valley next to a loch. It's Loch Haven. I'm sure it's Loch Haven or something like that. But there's a loch down there, and there's been sightings, or I'd say sightings, or like actually sounds that I've maybe heard down there. So there's a thing called the Shelter Stone, and this is kind of like a cave stroke boulder field thing. It's like maybe half a boulder, half cave, with kind of like a side built up in it, and it can fit a good number of people in there. It was at one point they say they could fit 18 men in it. You know what I mean? But I think now, I mean, they say they can maybe get like half a dozen or a dozen men in it or something like that. It's a big.
We're gonna be in it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we'll be up there. It's just down the back of where I camped anyway. And if I knew that then, I went there. But there's a couple of stories for that. There was one story which was in the 70s. It was in the 70s, late 60s or 70s, where there was two climbers, three climbers, sorry, who there's a rock face there in that valley. It's just down for Beinn MacDuibh, and in that valley I'm talking about, next to where the Shelter Stone is, there's a rock face that climbers go and climb. So they were going up there to kind of climb this the next day and stuff like that. And they were going to take refuge in the Shelter Stone and just get their bivvy bags out and stuff like that and stay in there. So at night, one of the guys woke up middle of the night, and he could hear, and he said to get down to this area, it's like steep, it's a boulder field, it's a total kind of minefield for walking in, because you can slip, fall, hurt yourself, it being steep, and there are a lot of rocks about and scree and stuff like that as well. So it's not an easy feat. And he said he woke up middle of the night, pitch black, and he could hear somebody walking down the mountain and the scree and the rocks. He actually heard rocks clacking together first, and then he could hear the feet coming down the side of the mountain. And then it came down, and this guy was expecting to see another mountaineer, a climber, and he kind of thought, why is this guy kind of walking down that side of the mountain? He's going to fall and hurt himself, because it's like really steep and there's loads of boulders everywhere. And then it got closer and closer and closer, and it came to the front. He was expecting to see torchlight.
Yeah.
But he didn't see torchlight. He just seen a figure stand at the mouth of the Shelter Stone. And it stood there for a few number of seconds, whatever. Then it walked away towards the loch. And then it wasn't heard again after that. I think before, during the night, they actually heard pots clanging about, but they just put that down to like mice or things like that, or whatever it was. But then this thing, he said it was definitely like large footsteps coming down the side of the mountain. So the guy didn't relate to his friends until kind of later on, and he was kind of he was really stricken with fear, because he wasn't wanting to move. He was in his bivvy bag. His other two friends are sleeping. He's awake. He hears this thing walking down the side of the mountain. It's not got a torch on. He's like, well, it's definitely not a climber, because there's nobody could walk down that without a torch on, without like half killing herself. And then this thing just trudged away towards the loch. And so he was kind of stricken with fear. But the next day he said to his friends, he says, how did you sleep last night? And one of them said, oh, I was fine. The other one was fine. He said, you sure? Did you hear that thing? And one of them said, yeah, I heard it as well. He was actually picked a rock up, and he was like sleeping with a rock in case this thing came in, whatever it was. And they started talking about it, exchanging what they'd heard. So they eventually they went to the same kind of thing as what the other guy on the mountain did. So they were trying to do tests and stuff to see what it was. So two of them kind of sat in the Shelter Stone, and somebody would walk down, and they couldn't recreate the noise, the loudness of the footsteps, even with their footsteps. So it must have been quite heavy coming down.
They couldn't. And I only know this because you sent me the information about this, and I found it fascinating. They couldn't make the small boulders and corbels move, like whatever it was that were walking down. Could make a move, and like as you said earlier, perfect analogy, clack together. They couldn't get anything to do that, which were fascinating. And
interesting.
How long did he sit on that story? Because that's another one that sat on it for years, I think.
I want to say that happened. I want to say something like 40 years.
Yeah, it's a long time he sat on that story.
It was I'm sure it was 40 years, something like that, sat in the story. I mean,
so I wonder, Chris, and I know you've not finished with that quite yet, but I wonder how many are out there, just like the stories at along East Yorkshire coastline and North Yorkshire, just like the stories in Wiltshire and everywhere. I wonder how many people are just sat. And if you're sat and listening to this and you're not even in chat and you have got something you want to share with Chris, with Les, with me, get in touch. You know, it's a safe place to share these things. And if you want discretion, not even if you don't want to talk about it, share it with us. You know, it just adds more meat to the bone.
That's the thing as well. It's like if you've got people who haven't read any of the literature or followed any of the stories or looked at any of the stories, and then they have a strange experience in the mountain, like it could be like some type of experience where they have some psychic phenomena or something like that, and they don't know they don't know none about it. It's just another piece to the story, though. You know what I mean? That's it. So, I mean, the interesting thing as well, I found another story as well from the same shelter stone, which was two climbers and a dog, and they were staying in the shelter stone as well, and the same thing happened, and the dog was going berserk. The dog was like growling, and it wasn't even going out, but the dog was growling and making a show at whatever was coming down the hill. And this thing had done the same again. It walked down to the front of the entrance and then walked off. And they got a kind of fright as well with that. And I mean, that was just another one just to add to that. But I mean, these stories, there's like a lot of different stories up there with things that happen in regards to that type of phenomena. But there's other stuff that goes on as well.
There's another one, and it's happened in October, the month of October. I don't know if there's a certain time of year that these things happen, and I haven't got enough details on it, where a guy opened his revolver up and fired in. So, you got that one?
Yeah, so that one was he was a captain in the military. Can't remember the guy's name, but he was up. He was like a keen mountaineer as well, and he'd frequented Ben MacDuibh many times, and it wasn't long after the war as well and stuff like that, or whenever it was. I can't remember, but he was a captain anyway, and he still had a revolver and stuff like that. So I can't imagine it being later on in time. I've not got this one written down, but I know the story. And he was up in Ben MacDuibh as well on the summit, and he heard something following him, footsteps following him, and he would stop and he would hear like footsteps kind of come towards him as if it was like he thought it was another climber or something like that. And something came out the mist. It was like a grey figure came out the mist there. And this man opened his revolver up. He had a revolver with him to actually shoot small game. That was the excuse. He was going to shoot small game for to feed himself when he was in the mountains and stuff like that. Obviously a bit of survivalist and whatever else, but he opened up his revolver on this thing and then ran all the way down the mountain after it as well.
Yeah. And so there we've got, you know, I know we've only got the bare outline of that, but we've got a man who's been in the war, obviously the military.
Yeah.
And he knows the consequences of using a gun.
Mm-hmm.
And something comes out of the mist. It's got to have been something other than some Scotchman. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
or
totally.
Some hiker, should I say. There's something else that's come out of the mist that's made him empty his revolver in the direction of this strange, I don't know. Is it an apparition? Do you think there's a physicality to it? There's got to be something physical for the sound.
There must be something physical for the sound, because as you say, and then for people to see, well, that other man who's seen and there's been other accounts as well where people been camping up there and seen a figure, you know what I mean, and seeing like a solid thing. But the one where the guy had seen like the short brown hair or short hair, you could see it in the moonlight, you said, with this big kind of creature. But there was another story as well. Like, so Ben MacDuibh drops off at quite a steep incline and goes into this. There's like a big valley. It runs up the side of Ben MacDuibh in the mountain. It's called the Larry Grew, and it's a pass. It's like a big valley. If you walk through it, it's like 1,000 feet, if not more, either side. Just kind of walking through it. It's quite wide, obviously, a big wide valley. And there was a lady called Wendy Wood who was up, and she was basically going through the Larry Grew, and she heard something like a noise So she said it was like unintelligible, but it was almost like there was consonants in it and vowels in it, but I couldn't understand what it was. And it was loud and it was next to me. She said it was loud and it was next to her. And she got a fright by it. And she kind of put it in her head and kind of thought, right, it's probably maybe a deer call further off, and it's maybe the sounds travelled by certain kind of because of the way the mountains are or whatever.
But it felt like it was there. It felt like it was in her ear.
It felt like it was. She said it was close to her. It was close to her. And then she, as well, had the footsteps follow her. She actually could hear her own footsteps, and then she started hearing one miss a beat, and it was like almost like there was something else following her. And then she was getting closer and closer, and she was enveloped with fear as well, and she legged it out of there. So I mean, there's the Larry Gru's interesting as well, because when you go along the Larry Gru, so the Larry Gru, the mouth it kind of, it's like right at the base, and it kind of comes up, and there's this big mountain range either side, and it's this big valley that goes right through it. And then so Ben MacDuibb's one side, and the other side is a place called Devil's Point. It used to be called Beinn MacDuibh. I think it was. I'll need to get the right pronunciation, but it was pronounced basically penis of the demon, right? Okay. Back in the day, and then they changed the name to Devil's Point because the Queen was visiting or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
something like that. Or whatever. So they changed the name of it, and so you can imagine you've got Ben MacDuibh one side, big massive valley. And you've got Devil's Point on the other side.
Yeah.
And Devil's Point's got some kind of folklore stories as well, where like it was some of the folklore stories I found was where women getting called to it before pregnancy and stuff like that. It was like some weird kind of stories, you know what I mean? But it was hard to kind of find them. And there's another story, a shepherd who was what was the other story with the shepherd who was supposed to do some deal with the devil or something like that? There was like weird stories like that, just folkloric tales, but you've no really kind of trace.
Folkloric tales, Chris, but you know, it's all close, isn't it? And like you've said, like there's a connection to fertility, and you've got the Devil's Point, and you talked about what did you call it before the Queen was going to visit?
It was penis of the demon. That's what the pronunciation. It was penis of the demon.
Do you know? And there's even if we come to East Yorkshire and we're staying in Scotland, and we look at the Rudston monolith, and some people believe it's a fertility symbol. The Rood Stone. You've got this 28-foot piece of rock just sticking up into the ground. The Rood Stone, and they talk about that as being a fertility symbol. But let's just before we go on, Larry Gru. I mentioned this to you earlier, and there'll be somebody jump on this and think they've invented the wheel. But Lugaru, the Lugaru, the werewolf, and you know, and the creature, and we've got this place called Larry Gru. And I know there's probably no connection, but there's a similarity there. So much so, and I mean, if I wanted to just cover names and words, I'd have just looked into it myself. Other people can as well. Do you know what I mean? I like sharing these things. Larry Gru, Lugaru. I think there's a similarity there, and I'm wondering what the link might be. Might be nothing, but I find that bit fascinating as well. And if anybody doesn't know what the Lugaru is, look it up. I see Mark Anderson's in. Mark, I think you've took a bit of information and passed off Mark maybe and exchanged things, Chris. But Mark's just told me a story today, or he's going to share an incredible story with Truth Proof in next week or so. So thank you, Mark. But right, sorry, Chris, over to you.
So you've got Devil's Point one side, and you've got the Ben MacDuibh the other. You need to remember it's all granite, boulder field, stuff like that, right? So you've got that there, and there's stories of people. There was a story, a chap that came off the mountain, the Devil's Point mountain, and it was a lightning storm or a storm kind of brewing, and at the bottom of Devil's Point, so it's between the two kind of mountains, but in this valley, there's a bothy. If you don't know what a bothy is mainly just like an old stone building where you can take refuge, and they're free basically. They'll have a place to put like a bed down, maybe like a sleeping bag, and it'll maybe have like a few bunk beds in it. It might have a few tins that somebody's left for beans or whatever else somebody else has left, and it'll have like a fireplace. So if you've got wood with you, you can make fire and stuff like that. You won't find any wood when about there.
I was going to say, I don't think I'll be carrying wood, so we're going to be cold.
So you've got that. So there was a story where like I was looking on some of the actual climbing forums and stuff like that to see if we could find anything. But the one before, it was an Athletic Gray's book as well, was where somebody came off the mountain and because of the lightning storm and took refuge in it's called the Cairngorm Mountains, and that's in between the two mountains. And he said he was in the bothy and he had this intense feeling of evil in the bothy and fear. And he eventually left the bothy. It was like out to the rain because it was just, he said it was just so intense. And it just changed. It was almost like the Oz factor again, where you get that thing where you can go past a certain point and you can feel the fear and you can come out at almost like back in the day when John Keel talked about the Oz factor. And he could basically actually find where the point started and ended.
Yeah.
He said it's actually like a place you can walk through. And it was almost like that the guy described. He said he was in the Cairngorm bothy and then he left the bothy and he felt better.
And he
could see
out of it, yeah.
Yeah, there was like a family camping further down and stuff like that. And he just felt better being out the bothy. And I heard stories when I looked in some of the kind of camping forums and stuff like that, walking forums. It was like stories people relaying and I tried to get them, but people wouldn't come back to us and stuff like that. But it was stories of people staying the night in the bothy and having like noises outside and stuff like that, or things getting moved about, or hearing like furniture moving and things like that. And
yeah, well, just to pause for that one, things like furniture. There's no furniture, is there? There's nothing.
Well, there's like you get maybe like there might be something like a table or a chair or things.
Yeah, but
like
things wouldn't be moving inside, would they?
No,
no,
because the guy was in his bed. Yeah, but he could hear things outside, inside,
and within
like
the proximity of the bothy, what is there?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I mean, it's like
miles of nothing.
There's nothing there. There's got a river. There's mountains. I went in there a couple of years ago and camped next to the Cairngorm Bothy. During the summer and stuff like that, it's quite common. People hike in and stay there, and there's a big bit in the valley where you can just camp and stuff like that. It's a nice area, but it is kind of foreboding with this big mountain that sits there, and you've got like the Devil's Point, and you've got the basically the Beinn MacDuibh the other side. Athletic Gray's cell said he was in the bothy and he heard something whisper his name.
Really?
Aye, and it's like, so you've got all these different types of stories in about the state in this one area in the mountains.
Do you think, Chris, it's the same phenomena, or do you think it's after looking at all these stories and these accounts, and no doubt you're going to gather even more over the years, do you think it's the same phenomena, or do you think that there's a lot of things happening here?
I don't know. I mean, I think it could be something to do with the same thing. I mean, it's like us now when we're looking at multiple phenomena mixed together, and we're seeing it potentially the same thing. You've got an adjacent mountain, which it's no far from Beinn MacDuibh. It's actually on the way up to Beinn MacDuibh. You pass it. It's literally like it's a kilometre or so away. The name escapes me, the mountain now, but the Etherious Society is the UFO type religion or communication. They believe in communication with aliens and stuff like that, or like UFOs and UAP. Been going for like decades. I think they started back in like the 50s or something like that. I mean, the Etherious Society. So if not even before that. So forgive me if I've got that wrong, but it is running about that kind of time scale where their kind of founder had communication with some type of entities. And then they've started this kind of following. And they've got pilgrimage sites across the world, there's certain mountains they go to. One next to Beinn MacDuibh is one of them. And they'll still have pilgrimages at certain times of the years to this mountain. And they relay that they can communicate with something that's there, like an alien intelligence that's there as well. So, I mean, that's interesting in itself and all. I mean,
that is interesting in itself. And I could have got this wrong here. And so somebody in chat might correct me, because I've not looked into it, but I'm pretty sure there's an Etherious Society very close to Broxer Forest, where we made Wolflands.
Right, okay.
Which is, if I'm wrong, somebody's going to correct me, but if I'm wrong, but I think there is.
This is the Etherious Society.
Etherious, Etherious. I've not looked into it, but something tells me there is. And I don't mean very close as in 20 miles away. I mean literally on the doorstep, which that's fascinating in a way that we've got these things happening and you've got that in that location, you know.
Yeah.
If I'm right, what do they know what we don't know?
No, that's it. I mean, so they've been going there for years, and they've got pilgrimage sites across the world where they try and communicate with other intelligences and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And now, back in the day, you would probably think that was like totally crazy stuff. You know what I mean? But now, when you're looking at things where you've got remote viewing, you've got a lot of other things going where like Skinwalker Ranch and communication and things like that. You know what I mean? There's so much there. You know what I mean? It's not too far to actually kind of think. I mean, experiencers have communication.
Well, I think a lot of people now, Chris, are realizing that you know we I don't mean we step away completely from the nuts and bolts. These UFOs, you can't knock on the side of them, and they're not solid. It's just some kind of metaphysical thing. But I think a lot of people now are realizing that there's a lot of what we're experiencing. We know everything we're experiencing comes through the visually and through the mind, but a lot of it is connected through meditation and deep thought and traumatic experiences, elative experiences, and we seem to interact and get connections with this unknown other during these times. So I think everything's got to be just left on the table. You know, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's I had them on. So the guy that basically runs it in the UK, I got him on for a podcast, and then he was telling me all about the kind of start of it and about Ben MacDuibh and stuff like that as well, and what their beliefs are and all that kind of stuff. It's quite interesting. Like, I mean,
well, let's put that picture up earlier. I don't know whether he's disappeared. I think he lost his signal. Right. Oh, right. Well, we got there. Cosmic Masters come to. Is this the what? How did we pronounce it? The Etherian.
Etherious.
I know because I saw Deb Shaw ask what it was. Etherious Society, Deb, because I saw it in the comment there. And okay. Oops, Etherious, as Awake says. Right on, Paul. I agree. Thanks, Space Cow. And I don't always get it right, do I?
It's interesting. They've got pilgrimage sites across the world. One of them is Ben MacDuibh. Oh, so it's no Ben MacDuibh. Sorry, it's the mountain next to Ben MacDuibh.
Yeah,
there's no way up to Ben MacDuibh. So
the Boffey
plateau and stuff.
Yeah. So the Boffey, where the strange occurrences happen, how far is that from Ben MacDuibh?
Oh, that's literally. I mean, you're down the mountain though, but you're probably, as the crow flies, it's like a kilometre or something. I mean, if that. Yeah. I mean, it's.
I'm planning our expedition.
Yeah. I mean, to get to the Cairngorm Mountains, it's like down a right steep kind of cliff edge. You would need to go way back round and come.
How would we do that one then, Chris? Because you're the guide here. How would we do it?
If you were going to the actual Cairngorm Mountains, you start at the place called Rothay Murcus, and you can walk up through the forest, and then you get to the mouth of the Larry Grew, it's called, and then you can just walk through for there, and that takes you to Cairngorm Mountains. So you can imagine you're on a lower level kind of plateau going through a valley, and then the Ben MacDuibh Mountains it's basically on your left-hand side and further up. So to get to the Cairngorm Mountains, you need to go along that valley, but Ben MacDuibh, you're a way round and back up the hill, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So there's a bit of different. There's two expeditions to do, like kind of that. Okay. It's like hard to do it in the same day. It'd be
well, we were planning on 3 or 4 days, weren't we? So
totally. Yeah.
Right. So just before you touched on forest, we'll come to Les in a minute. We'll see if there's any questions. But you touched on forest because we've said it's barren. There's boulder fields. There's nothing. But within walking distance, then a couple of kilometers, do we have forest?
Yeah, I mean, you've got at the higher points of the mountain, it's barren, right? And it's like just boulder fields and stuff like that. Granite as well, and then you've got quartz, big lumps of quartz, just white lumps of quartz just lying there as well. It's quite cool. And then, but it's one of the largest forests in the UK. I mean, when you go in the lower slopes, it's just forest as far as the eye can see. So there's forest right around the Cairngorms, and there's some old forests there as well. You know what I mean? So
it's there. It's not uncharted, is it? It's not untapped.
Because you get people.
But it's still very remote for a lot of people. This, isn't it? It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a walk in the park, should we say this, by any means.
Yeah. No, it's no. And I mean, there's loads of other parts of the Cairngorms as well. I mean, like people will frequent, for example, the Career Bothy and things like that. But there's places in the Cairngorms you could walk up and you'll never see another soul that day. You know what I mean, or whatever. Especially like places where the shelter stone is, or the kind of the loch down the back and things like that. There's quite a lot of different places in the mountains where you go, and people walk up and go to, like, they'll do the summit, the Munros, because they want to bag the Munros and stuff like that. You get a bit of that.
Tick it off their list kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, quite a lot of it is mainly at the weekends and stuff. I mean, it's busy at the weekends because people go up, and in the winter there's a ski slope there as well. But that's actually know where the mountain is. It's further over, but the ski slopes on other mountains. But in the winter, it's people go missing up there. I mean, because it's
you must be reading my mind. I were actually going to ask that question, but I'm also mindful. We'll touch on that in a moment.
Yeah.
Let's pull Les in and see if there's any questions, because we want to talk about yours before you close us down at 8:30.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, some great questions in tonight. First of all,
thanks, Chris.
I've got to say, Chris, you're doing real wonders for the Scottish tourism industry, because I think you've sold Ben MacDuibh pretty well tonight. So with that being said, I'll just get this one on. It's kind of something that you might want to read here, Paul. Let's have a look. Robert Baker, I went to Danes Dyke for the first time today, down to the beach and along to Speeton. I walked back from the beach all the way to the main road in
the tunnel under the road, and Robert, I was there as well. Yeah, I went as well myself today, Robert. So you'll know that quite a nice day up there, weren't it? And I didn't go onto the beach. I just had a little wander around. I planned on doing a few bits of sort of spiel talk for our live stream, but didn't get out done. I told Les earlier it was just me and the Bobster, and we just had a little general bomb around. But I hope you had a great day, my friend, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and just a question from me, Chris. With the mountain itself, is the many UFO sightings associated? One thing, is it at the peak of the mountain, the top of the mountain, that people are seeing the grey man or getting feelings and that, or is it on the journey upwards as well?
It's a bit of mixture, because people are having experiences in the Larry Grew, which is in the valley below, and they're having it in various points on the mountain. So you're having it on maybe the way up to the mountain, you're having it in the shelter stone, which is further back from the mountain, and you're having a lot of experiences actually on the summit of the mountain as well, right on the top.
And UFOs, are they prolific?
I mean, there's been some light phenomena seen and stuff like that, but I mean, in terms of UFOs, I've not looked into reports for UFOs up there yet. I mean, in regards to that, but the Etherious Society, as I said, they're up there and they go a pilgrimage to actually communicate with something up there.
Oh, that's interesting, Paul. Yeah,
it's fascinating, isn't it? Absolutely fascinating.
Okay, then we've got a question from Debbie Shaw. Thanks for the question, Debbie. Chris, are there many missing persons cases up at the mountain?
Yeah, there is some. People do go missing. I mean, that's like Paul touched on that there. I don't know what the names or anything like that, but people do go missing up there in the winter, even in the summer as well. You can imagine if you get the mists coming in, if you've not got the right equipment with you, you could easily go missing. But some people go missing, some people aren't found. I mean, it does happen. But I mean, in regards to in the winter, all the actual when the snow covers it, you can't see the trails, so everything looks the same.
Yeah,
and the way the mountain is, and you could easily get lost. And there's to go to the mountain. It's the one. This mountain has basically got cairns actually made all the way up the mountain about every 200 meters, so you can actually follow the cairns up. When I was up once in the winter, I was going to turn back. It was like February or something, and it was 50 mile an hour winds blowing. It was like getting sandblasted with all the ice crystals in the face and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then it was clear. It was kind of clear though. And then you got to that plateau before you go up to the summit, and it's still a wee walk to the summit. It's maybe about another 40, 50 minutes to there. And the mist came in. So you get to the point where, like, should we go on because the mist is there, or should we turn back? Okay, we've got equipment where we've got like compasses and maps and stuff like that, but you can't see nothing. So then the mist, I was going to turn back, and the mist would clear as much where you can see another cairn. So you'd walk to that cairn, and then it would just open up again. So you understand how people can go missing. I'm not saying it's
so you can
people
be
go missing every year. People go missing every year.
People can be totally disorientated and easily when the mist fog clouds come down. Thanks for the.
There's been things where, if you look into history, there has been people missing. People get missing and they're found. There has been a few people who are missing and not been found, and there's people who have appeared. So there's people who have appeared in the mountain, and they've never been identified. So there's a story going back to.
So we're talking a body that's been found.
Yeah.
Right.
There was actually a man who was found in the mountain going back. I think it was in the 30s or something like that. Where I'm not sure of the dates. So forgive me if I'm wrong with the dates, but it was found with a suit on, and basically a briefcase. And this is like for the main town. You're probably like 10 miles, or if no, it's probably a lot more than that. It's like 15 miles to the main town. So this guy was found right up like the Larry Grew or something like that with a briefcase and a suit on, like dead. Nobody knew who he was. There's been other stories like that as well, you know what I mean, through time. But I mean, a lot of them just get lost to time. But people go missing every year, not because of any funny experiences, but because of the fact that it's basically the terrain can look the same. And if you don't have the right equipment, you can get lost. But sometimes compasses go off as well because of just with the amount of granite, magnetic fields, all that kind of stuff as well. I've heard of that before.
Okay, not specific question. Not a specific question to Ben MacDuibh, but Karen is asking, Chris, have you encountered any spiritual energies or entities from either folklore or any other elements around ancient battlegrounds of Scotland?
I've encountered anything like that. Well, I mean, say probably if you've not heard the story where in the Bathgate Hills, where I never even knew this was a cairn. This was a burial cairn. I never knew it was a burial cairn. I was out running and I basically had the Oz factor, the same kind of fear factor, which comes on you. What I talked about earlier on. I never experienced anything like it. And what I kind of experienced was, it was like something going back to when I was a child and having a really, really intense fear of something I didn't know. And it was like that. And I actually cut my run short. And I went back home and I told my wife. And it was a crazy feeling. It was like just a certain point when I went deeper into these woods, it was like something was like telling me not to go any further. So I didn't. And I cut my run short. I went home, told the wife. And it wasn't until 20 years later I interviewed David Coleman about the Silverman case, when he had seen some entity running through the woods when he was driving. It was like 50 metres for the same place.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and then that was a kind of burial mound next to Cairngorm. It's not at Cairngorm, it's further along to Cairngorm, which Cairngorm was like it dates back to like 5,500 years. It was
once again, it's a locational based phenomena, though, isn't it? You know, you've connected two there. I bet there's more out there, Chris.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for the monetary donation from Fort Man tonight. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. And I've got a question from John Paul Body. Hi, Chris. Do you think the landscape set in stone or rock, like limestone or other varieties, could be playing a part in the phenomenon, like with the stone tape theory?
Yeah, I do believe that. I mean, I believe like there's something in that way. I mean, up there, it's granite, quartz.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Quartz is, potentially used for recording stuff, things like that. I'm a great believer in that. You've got the piezoelectric effect as well, because of the pressures there as well, which create things like light phenomena. We don't know what else that can create. You know what I mean? Or what it can retain. So I do believe like it's a lot of it's to do with what the landmass is made of as well, and that's why you get things happening in certain places.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question.
And is it a good spot to see the Northern Lights, Chris? Because if so, I'm coming.
Well, I mean, it was when I was up there, as I said, you can get enveloped with the mist and the fog and stuff like that, or just cloud cover. You're that high. When I got up to the summit, before the summit, which is a kind of plateau before it, it was crystal clear sky. at night, and you could see everything. And I thought, I eventually went to my bed after watching satellites and stuff like that, and you could see the Milky Way. And then I went to my bed, I got up, and you couldn't see like a foot in front of you. I mean, so it just depends on the weather.
Yeah, so you're not going to see them, Les. You might go up for a few times, Les, without seeing anything.
Yeah. And Rachel Mitchell is saying interesting. There's quartz on the mountain.
Yeah, I mean, actually, just you walk up to Beinn MacDuibh, there's big, large, like white lumps of quartz just sitting, like spread across the boulder field as well.
Wow.
Any gold? We get quartz and gold, don't they? We'll all be up there with us pans.
Right, he's 64 saying the story of the creature standing by the tent reminds me of the Teddy Roosevelt Bowman's story. Creepy. You know about that story, do you, Chris? Yeah.
I think I've heard that one. I mean, I heard that.
If anybody didn't know, just check it on the internet there. And because I don't think we've got time to go through it tonight. I've got a question from Stan Smith. Camps on the Mar Estate in 2022, 8 miles west of Braemar. There was word that someone had reported seeing a grey man a few months earlier.
Thank you, Stan.
I mean, the Mar Estate as well had records and stuff like that Affleck Gray went through, and to try and get accounts. And somebody else actually had some other accounts that dated back to the 15th century, but or the 14th and 15th century, certain accounts. But because they were further away, he discounted them. Yeah. So he's maybe not thinking this thing's traveling. He's maybe just thinking it's like some
locational based thing.
He's maybe not thinking it's like it can maybe go 100 miles or 60 miles or 70 miles. So he discounted them. I mean, but interesting to find out more with him.
Well, there's a little bit more on that Paul knows. Just to, I feel a bit like Columbo sometimes because I do know what people are talking about, but I don't say out and I just teeter around edges. But it was September 27th, Stan, 2022, and it was a ranger from the Mar Estate who claimed to have seen something huge and grey, like creeping through the mist. So, yeah, I think that if you were up there in 2022 and you're saying somebody had reported it, I think that's going to be the one. But yeah, fascinating. Honestly, I wish I were there. I just, it gets me buzzing, things like this. It really does.
Okay, I got a question from Scott Lawrence. Great story, Chris. Have you had any experiences yourself? Had a strange experience myself in Ireland on the mountains of Mourne. A great show.
Well, we're probably going to get to that one before he closes us down in about 20 minutes. Scott, what do you reckon, Chris? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of my main questions done. But I'll throw this one in. It's how far you want to take it yourself, guys.
Okay.
Fortman is asking, where do werewolf tales come from?
People like you, Fortmine. People like me collecting these accounts, Chris, Les, and everybody in chat and experiences. You know, if you know, and we use the word werewolf sort of loosely because I know that people want to use the word dogman. People talk about other cryptids, Sasquatch, but people are seeing these things. That's where these stories come from. I don't know whether you mean where do the actual things originate from. That might be closer to your question. I don't know. I really don't know. Something tells me that they're not here all of the time. They're not in our kind of sphere of existence. What do you think, Chris?
I don't know. I think they're living when they're here, but it's wherever they go to. I mean, that's kind of my take on it.
But it's an incredible ability then. If they're living when, and I'm not disagreeing with you, I agree. But if they're living when they're here and they can make a tree leaves crackle and branches snap when they're here, there's some kind of physicality to them.
Yeah.
What kind of ability is it that they can just slip in and out? It's fascinating, isn't it?
Crazy. Yeah. It is.
Yeah. Any views on that, Les?
No, I agree with what you said originally there in Paul. Just like hand-me-down stories, and obviously people over the past years and generations just like frightening tales anyway. So clump all that together, and I think you've got yourself a good we will tell probably.
Well, but sometimes, Les and Fort Mine and Chris, we call them hand-me-down stories, but what we're collecting are first-hand accounts. Obviously, if you've got something and it's outlived the person and they've been told by the grandfather or the great grandfather, then all you can do is grasp onto that account and relay it. But a lot of the times, the stories that you get like that are coming out of locations where you're getting first-hand accounts of the same thing. So I think we've just got to attach some kind of credibility.
Things where you get the stories, like one of the ones in Scottish folklore was the Wolver. The Wolver up in Orkney, and it was alleged to catch fish and leave fish on people's windowsills and stuff like that. It was like a friendly werewolf.
Right, yeah. The Wolver.
So, the Wolver. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm done for now, guys.
Okay, well, that's just. I think this is just going to dovetail in really to what I want you to share with us from about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. I mean,
please.
I don't think it's extremely extraordinary, but we went up and spent the night up in Beinn MacDuibh, and to see what we could see, you know what I mean, and just to actually suss it out as well, where we could camp and stuff like that for our kind of future expedition and that as well. So, got up there, nice clear skies all day, beautiful night. Got the camp up. As I said, it was pretty cold because you're up quite high. But then once I kind of settled into bed, my plan was to get back up middle of the night, maybe about 2 or 3 in the morning, and sit up for a wee bit as well. But when I did get up, it was that mist and fog and enveloped the whole kind of camp. It was just, you couldn't see anything in front of you.
Just 2 of you, Chris, were they?
2 years. I was planning to go myself. I did go myself the first time and stayed in the Larry Grew. I was planning to go this time as well myself, but I got like one of my friends who wanted to come, so I brought him along. So
and the dog.
Sorry?
And the dog.
And the dog, sorry. Yep, and the dog.
Yeah.
So I took the dog, who was a 3-year-old husky. So we went up, got camped. We actually went in quite late. So the time we got up there, it was actually the sun was just setting. As soon as we got the tents built, the sun was just setting over the mountain. And then obviously settled and got a bite to eat and stuff like that. So as I said, I got up during the night, and there was it was too much fog and mist, so to sit up and to kind of listen and stuff like that as well. So it was really, you couldn't see a foot in front of you. It was really, really dense. So I sat up for a tiny wee bit, went back to my bed, and then I got up in the morning again. So it was a bit lighter, but it was still quite heavy mist. You could see maybe 5-6 meters in front of you. I got the dog. I had the dog in a lead, so she wouldn't run away, and stuff like that. But I did let her off the lead and way down the mountain when I was going down. So there wasn't much stuff there, but just in case there's any deer in the mountain or anything like that, I was the one to chase anything up there because it just drops off at some bits. That's what I was worried about.
Yeah.
So I done the toilet, relieved myself of the toilet, and then the dog just sat at the side as if she was staring into something at the fog, and I kind of found it odd, the fact that she wasn't pulling. She was like sitting, like pointed at something as if she was like totally staring at something in the fog. And I kind of expected when the fog clears, you maybe see something like a deer or something like that or whatever else. But she could sense something was there.
Yeah.
And I'd say it was less than 5 meters. I'd say it was probably 3 meters in front of me. There was a loud kind of croaking noise came for the ground. And the ground is like hard packed. Like granite, and there was like where I put the tent, it was like there's some gravelly bits where I could actually barely get a peg into, and there's like, you can imagine it's like granite with some kind of hardcore sand, and then there's like some vegetation that just grows on top of that. So there was a loud croaking noise that came in front of me, and I mean, I looked into this, but different kind of noises up there and stuff. I mean, you could put it down to things like deer. It wasn't that, because it was close. This was like close in front of me on the ground. And the dog wasn't even looking at that, though. The dog was still looking straight ahead, or whatever was there straight ahead.
Which is unusual in itself. And that's
yeah. If it was like an animal there, she would have went for it like all day long. But this noise, I'm going to try and repeat the noise, right? So this, like, it was like that. But
I'm glad you did that. I didn't like asking you because you did it earlier, and I thought you might not want to do it.
It was close, though. It was close. And I looked into different noises up there. There's a ptarmigan bird up there at Crooks, but it's not as deep as that. I mean, it Crooks. It's
well, you know what it sounded like, and this was deep.
Yeah. So I mean, it was quite loud and it was a bit deeper, but it was like right in front of me on the ground, and I got a fright actually. I wasn't
Chris, when you say on the ground or from the ground,
it was just in front of me on the ground.
Right.
I mean, that's what it sounded. It sounded like inside. I mean, just in front of me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but there was no burrows there or nothing like that. There was no like rabbit holes or anything like that.
Nothing.
I mean, nothing there. And the dog wasn't looking at that though. The dog was looking straight ahead into the fog. So the fog cleared, and I was expecting I'm going to see a deer, and it's maybe just the noise reverberating or something like that. I made a video at the time. It was quite windy to hear it. I sent you, but you could hardly hear.
We hopefully we'll have a short put together for Saturday with that experience or little bits of it.
Yeah,
and
cool.
Just to add on to it. But go on.
Yeah.
Please.
So that was it. So the croaking noise, the actual mist and fog cleared, and you can roughly see a half a kilometre, if not a kilometre in front of you, and up the kind of round of the hill when you come down to this plateau, and you can see the other direction as well. So it cleared, and you could see, and there was nothing there. And then the noise happened right behind me again, behind the tent. But this time it wasn't in the ground. I'd reckon it was about 2 feet above the ground. It was the same noise again, and there was nothing there.
It had moved around. It's behind you. How did you feel?
I mean, I got a fright because I was scared to actually look at the ground in front of me. But it was like, this was like 5 a.m, and it was like or 5:30 in, and it was like just starting to get light and stuff like that. And that noise, it was like, whoa, it came from it was weird. I mean, it was just weird, but I mean, there could be a logical explanation for it. I'm not making it out of anything, but it was just odd. And I woke my mate up and I says, look, I've heard this. We called it the croak monster. It's like, I heard this weird croaking noise. I don't know what it is. And I can't see nothing. And then I went back into the tent, and the dog was just sitting pointed. And you see that in the video as well. She's not pulling. Normally she'd pull the hand off you to go and attack something or chase something. And I got her back in the tent. We sat in the tent, and my friend made the noise as a joke. And it wasn't him the first time because the noise was in front of me and he was behind the tent. It was he was in a separate tent further over to the side. And I told him, and he was just talking through the tent kind of canvas. I heard this strange noise, and it was like a loud kind of croak right in front of me. And he made the noise that I'd relayed to him, and the dog jumped up in the tent. This is like a one-man tent I'm in with the dog.
It's strange, Chris, isn't it? You know, and we know. Well, we hope there can't be a connection, but people will have heard me over the last 2 or 3 weeks talk about this strange noise we heard on cliff tops. And when we first heard it, I mean, I think it was Jeremy that called it the were frog. He said it sounded like a strange deep croaking at first. It did change as it moved about, because it literally moved about. It were at back of Martin Abbas, then it were under my feet, and we're all together. So and it's not Paul saying, "No, it's there." We all heard it. Then it's the other side. Then it's but what's the chances that you're relating this to some kind of amphibians? Really, and then I've told you about this, and then we've got that. It's odd, isn't
I hadn't heard that story that you'd said, and
Martin called it Jeremy called it the were frog, and I sort of laughed me head off. I says, we've created a new cryptid. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I said, because when I didn't even know if it was worth mentioning. And I said, when I was speaking to you on the phone, and I said, well, we did hear this one thing that was really odd, and it was like we called it the croak monster. And I explained the story, and you're like, I've heard the same thing.
It's just so strange. I think in end, and I think you were right. I think Linny kind of summed it up, what it sounded like when it finished doing what it were doing. Because originally it did, like Martin and Jeremy thought it sounded like some kind of frog, really deep, or toad. Yeah. But the curling granite blocks that clack together, and they make that sound. It sounded like that. That's probably what I thought I could hear under my feet. But I found that one fascinating, that you're coming out with that, and with similar terminology, and we've got it. So it gave you a fright. So, has it put you off going back up there?
No, I want to go back up, and I want to stay in the shelter stone.
Yeah.
I mean, when I came back, I was quite tired coming back because it's like it's a bit of a trek. But when I kind of got back and had a good night's sleep, I kind of thought, right, I need to get back up there.
Yeah.
So,
and what does your immediate family think? Are they happy for you to? Are they worried for you making these excursions?
No, my wife did say that make sure you just message me that you're up the mountain. I mean, when you're up there.
Is there a phone signal up there, Chris?
There is a phone signal up there. You can get a signal in the top bit, yeah. When you kind of go into the plateau, you can't get a signal, but you can get a signal on the way up to the top bit. But I mean, the interesting thing as well is when I heard the noise, I basically got a FLIR camera and I got the FLIR out.
We're going to talk about the thermal, yeah.
Yeah, and I couldn't see past the fog though. And then when it passed, I got it out again and you couldn't see anything. There was nothing there. You know what I mean? And as I said, if it was a bird or something, a creature that was in front of me, the dog would have went for it all day long. You know what I mean? So,
well, do you know, Chris, we're an hour and 24 minutes in, and I don't really think we've got time to talk about the hum and electro sensitivity, have we? Really? Because I know you wanted to touch on that, didn't you?
Yeah, it's fine. Talk about it another time.
I think we should do. But just before we close it down, then you talked about the guy that saw this thing walking away down the mountain, and he described it as having brown fur. That kind of makes it a little bit more credible, his story, for me, because he's not trying to say, "Oh, this thing was big and it was completely grey." There's a lot of. Do you think we're dealing with something that people would call a Bigfoot, Sasquatch?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what it seems like, and there's been, as you know, there's been other sightings in that kind of vicinity. You know what I mean? Before where like Chris Turner done the film The Elusive and stuff like that. There's like some stories which are further south. There was a story on one of the stories where there was something that chased somebody's car. That's no far from there either.
Right. Okay.
So there's certain things there, you know what I mean? And there's another story on The Elusive as well, which was in the lower forests. The lower forest when people had seen a Bigfoot type creature as well. So I don't know. I mean, there's that mixed in with some type of phenomena up there. I mean, that's
absolutely.
Like, and people, I mean, that's the thing. It's like I think Norman Colley brings it home quite good by just basically saying, when he says, "I'll not go back up to the mountain myself. There's something really queer about the top of Beinn MacDuibh."
Yeah, and what is it in Gaelic? What do they call it? I'm fear. I'm fear left more. Is it?
I'm fear left more. That's it. I'm fear
left more. So is left more? I'm fear.
No, it's in Gaelic. I'm fear left more, and it's the big grey man. That's what it's been mentioned. That's what it's
fabulous. What a title! It's just brilliant, isn't it? So, Chris, I know that you're away because you've got a busy day tomorrow. Myself and Les will pick up and run with a few things if anybody's got any questions for us. But as always, Chris, thank you. Will you come back and we can touch on the electrosensitivity and other things next time you're on?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks
guys. The chat as well. And thanks, guys.
No, you're welcome.
I'll catch up with you soon. Maybe get to see you in a wee bit as well.
Hope so. Have a good holiday.
Right. Cheers. See you later, guys.
Take care, mate. Bye. Bye. So it's down to us, Les. Thank you, Chris. That was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, thanks for the questions for Chris tonight. Some good questions in there. Yeah. And I'm glad to actually, Paul. I'm glad you asked about the phone signal because I was going to ask him what's the Wi-Fi like up there.
Well, it sounds like there is some. We could do a live stream from up there, Les. That would be good.
From a tent, from a foggy
tent, shivering like Scooby and Shaggy. From Scooby-Doo, that's what we'll be doing. I see Carl Dan's in. I see you, Carl. Yeah. What day were you coming up to Bempton, Carl? Just put it in or message Linny and let us know. I'm not sure if it's this weekend. And I know there'll be a few people coming up Friday night, which is, tomorrow. So I'll try and make effort to get up there, guys. I don't know whether you're going up, are you, Les?
More than likely.
Maybe. Potentially if you can. Yeah,
we'll see how we go.
Right. So just before you jump in there, Les, we go up onto those cliff tops, as people know, quite a few times during the week, sometimes on a weekend. Last night we got about, 5 to 10 seconds of the phenomena, which I found it fascinating, absolutely stunning. I've not even took it off my camera yet. I likened it to somebody just sprinkling gold light on the sky. It just went, they appeared and then they'd gone. I know Ian got a few seconds of it on his, which I probably touched on earlier, didn't I? So it's there. Things might be being seen, because at Driffield on, what day are we today? Thursday. At Driffield in between 9 and 10. Forgive me because I can't remember the name of the person who messaged me, but I will put it up later. We might do this Sunday, go into a bit more detail. But between 9 and 10, somebody driving down Nafferton Slack towards Driffield, and so you're gonna have to Google these locations, people, if you're not from East Yorkshire. Said a single orange sphere just punched into existence in the sky, stayed there as he's driving for 15 to 25 seconds, and then just imploded and had gone. Which is a good sign, because we're only, I don't know, less 15 miles away from Bempton and Flamborough. So don't mean, things are going to happen, but these things just seem to start to tick. And they keep ticking.
What was the light conditions like? Was it
great light conditions? And last night we got a clear view of whatever it was we were looking at, Les. And I just haven't got a clue what we were looking at. We were just looking at a series. I think there were about 8 that opened up, that just sort of appeared and randomly just appeared in the sky. And as fast as we were putting the cameras on, they'd gone. And that was it then. That was it. I don't know what time it was. Turned 9 o'clock. We stayed then till quite late. There was nothing else. But I think whoever I spoke to today, in fact, it might have been you that I was talking to. I said perhaps you could leave cameras running. Somebody did leave the camera.
I certainly did. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just not. There's a full 360 where they can appear.
Yeah. And it's a bit like that. The old Kit Kat advert, where the photographer's waiting for the animal to come out his den, and he turns around and it comes out and he misses it all.
That's just what it's like. I literally just went to my flask, lifted my head up as other lads were getting theirs, and they were there. But they'd gone as fast as they'd appeared. It was really strange. Earlier in night, we'd seen another one. As I say, people will be saying, well, why ain't you took it off your camera yet? That's all a bit blasé, but, you're not really that fussed to get it off. I do want to, but as Les would probably tell you, I'm probably up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm doing other things, and I've got quite a bit on at the moment as well. But I will get it off the camera. For Sunday night, we'll at least share the stills of what we got yesterday, and hopefully we might have a little bit more. As I know it's the OLM conference this weekend, so there'll be a lot of people coming to East Yorkshire to look at this conference and listen to Peter Robbins and Whitley Strieber, Paul Ascoff, and the speakers at the conference. I'm not going to be able to make it, unfortunately, but I'm sure it'll be great. What am I going to say? So some of these people probably gravitate towards Bempton. I know people have asked me if I'm going to end up there. I'll definitely be there Friday night. Can't guarantee Saturday, but there you go.
Okay, I've got a question from 1423. We hear a lot about werewolves. Have we any reports of a weir woman? Has anyone ever reported getting a sense they're observing a female dogman? If it's a real entity, no reason why they shouldn't exist. Good question.
You make a great point. I don't know, 14, could it be, and I'm only surmising that these things are so big, although I was supposed to be looking for breasts. I don't know. I really don't. But these things are so big that they do look masculine, and we automatically assume that they are male. Somebody did contact me who claimed that they'd seen a female werewoman in Buckton, of all places. And I don't mean I didn't follow it up because I'd got no faith in whoever had told me, but it weren't the strongest sort of evidence that I'd ever heard. So I didn't pursue it in great detail, I've got to admit. But I often wonder, because of what we're looking at and people are describing things well over 6 foot, 7, 8 foot tall, whether we are actually assuming that this is masculine. I don't know.
I think he'll read more reports of female attributes coming from Sasquatch, from American writers, reporters, investigators, etc.
You make a good point though, 40, and you know it is a good point. And in which case, if we're creating these things, if these are tulpas, and it's the power of the mind that's potentially creating some of the things that we see, is that why we're only seeing the most ferocious, the most fearsome, and it's masculine? I don't know.
Okay, I've got a
great questions, thank you as well, because
you.
you know.
Yeah. Tetrastatic, it definitely, granted that these experiences seem to be around from my experience, but I've had weird stuff around Flint as well. Like Paul said, it's in and out.
Yeah, well, great there, Tetra, because we have a lot of flint kind of embedded in the chalk composition around our area of East Yorkshire. And I used to say, I don't mean I've got it completely wrong, but I used to say, people would say, what composition is the rock around there? And I'd say mainly chalk, but it isn't. At the foot of the cliffs around East and North Yorkshire, there's boulders. There are boulder fields, as Mick Sigson would be keen to tell you, because he's fished below the cliffs, gone down on ropes and things. Them rocks that you're looking at that just look that big are actually as big as buses and cars. And they're not made of chalk. I think it's some kind of grit stone. It's not granite, but it's a hard stone, and the big boulders. So boulder fields and quartz. I mean, Chris talked about the quartz composition and big lumps of quartz being present up and around Ben MacDuibh. There's got to be some connection there, I would think. I mean, you talk about places. Go on, Les. Sorry.
Yeah, and people, I think people in the chat picked up found it interesting about the piezoelectric phenomena as well to do with quartz. And
absolutely,
what does that generate? We don't know, but
we don't.
Okay, I've got let's have a look. We're moving on.
Please tell me there's a question, because there's note in my head.
Okay, I ain't pre-read this, but we'll read it. Jack 1948, cryptids may be physical creatures in both dimensions. The journey through the portal may not affect them.
Yeah, you could be true. It could be true, Jack. It's one of them, isn't it? We just don't know. I think we can all agree to disagree, because we all know that there's some reality to what we're talking about. I've 100% faith in the witnesses that I say every time that we interviewed for Wolflands, absolute 100% faith that they saw what they were describing. But there were so many other strange things occurring at the same time. Like the light form phenomena in some instances connected with the cryptid sighting. And I wonder if you were on interesting cryptids, would you have disregarded the light form phenomena or vice versa? Do you know what I mean? It's fascinating, but what you're saying, the journey through the portal may not affect them. And I know that you say may not. We simply, there he is. He's coming through portal. Come on, Bobster. We just don't know, do we? We don't know how they're managing to get here, and I really haven't got a clue. There he's got there through the
he jumps on there, Paul. Yeah,
he's fabulous. Yeah, he's on springs. Funny old thing, aren't you?
Stan Smith, poacher near Culloden reported his salmon being stolen by a Bigfoot type beast.
Really? That's
interesting, isn't
it? Honestly,
Stan, with that, yeah.
And the poacher, the ironic is that though, that the poacher got his salmon stolen. It's funny, isn't it? Really,
by another poacher.
Yeah. This is the ultimate poacher.
Okay, let's have a look. David Barker, Paul, you asked Chris what his family felt about him being in remote locations. What does Mary and the girls think about you?
Well, hey up, Dave. It's good to every week I say, Dave, we've got to meet up and have a chat. And this is the guy that's got a few amazing experiences. Well, two that I know of. Not a lot, really, Dave, to be honest with you. She's a lot happier now when I go up onto cliff tops. That there's Pete there, there's Linny. Obviously, soon as Bob gets himself sorted with his hip, Bob's going to be joining us again. But there's Pete, there's Linny, there's Jeremy. She feels a lot happier now because before I used to go on my own, and or a lot at time I did. So it's no place to be really, you know, late at night or just in pitch black on a remote cliff top or on your own, especially in a place where people have gone missing, place where people claim to see UFOs, or places where, you know, there's some terrifying stories. The elderly couple that were walking, that I found out about days later, and they were walking, and then the next thing they know, they were in a room. They didn't say on a spaceship. They were in a room, and this elderly lady were having an examination. That's as much as she wanted to say. Intimate examination, and absolutely terrified. Closed them. It's absolutely closed these people down. It's probably changed their view on the world, changed their view on what is and what is not possible. I only found out about it because a close friend of mine happens to be a close relative of theirs. Yeah. And they relayed this to them instantly, not for me, just because it was so traumatic. And I got to talk to them and found out about this. And this were on cliff tops where I walk, where I go. And I saw effect it had on that old lady. So do I want to be up there on my own? Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe. And we talk about the fear. Let's just stay with the fear just momentarily. Is there any questions, Les? We'll just do this fear bit for a moment.
Yeah.
There's a good friend of ours that comes onto cliff tops. He usually arrives, just looms out at darkness. Half at time we might see his torch, or we'll see light go on as his car enters the car parking area, probably half a mile away, and then we think, oh, that might be him. And he looms out at darkness. And I've told this story before. Walks about all over, wild camped, all over the place. The Scottish Islands, done shooting, everything. And he had this bout of extreme fear. And Chris, earlier tonight, kind of switched it, talked about it perfectly when he said you kind of walk through it. It's almost like you walk through this invisible barrier where it's there, it's on you, and then it's off. Because that's exactly what this fella said when he walked along the top of the field towards the base. And he's done it many, many times in the complete darkness. And he said this fear just descended on him. And he carried on walking. He tried to walk through it. And then eventually he said, I just left it. And when I went back same way, it weren't there. So what is it? What is it that's interacting with people? I really don't know. Maybe it got me once, didn't it? Sorry, Les, go on.
Yeah, I mean, in some of the past shorts you've written talks about people on the footpath at Bempton and have walked through a tunnel of fear. Really,
it's absolutely.
And
you know, Les, I think it's as important as the rest of it. I think it's important as the visual, as the seeing the UFO, as people who claim to have seen the cryptids. I think this fear is just as important as all of that, because I think that it goes hand in hand. I don't know what that dog's doing. It goes hand in hand with what we're dealing with. And sometimes it's the things you can't see that are more frightening and more sinister than the things you actually can see, you know. Anyway, go on, just hit us with a question, Les, if we've got any. I see, let's have a look. Low shifts in. Lee, Roscoe, we've done Big Bird. I think Mel Suter were in. Thanks, Alison. Tony Worrell, Nuki Brown. Yep, that's all good.
Joe, Paul, several sightings around Driffield recently. One I mentioned to you, same night, second sighting over Showground and others.
Yeah, it's strange, Joe, that they're opening up. There's things being seen at the moment, which is fascinating. You know, I mean, I was tempted after live stream tonight whether I should have a run out. I probably won't, but I definitely will be doing tomorrow. And we'll see if we can do a bit of observation. There'll be a group of us, and hopefully, you know, there might be quite a few people up there. Sometimes it enhances it, sometimes it kills it, because people I don't know, we just talk about different things. But anyway.
Okay, this one was for Chris. I won't read the word. Well, We know what he's talking about. Any mutes in Scotland, Chris? Did he speak to you of anything like that, Paul?
No, he didn't, Blue. But I dare say that will be there. You know, these things will be happening. Whether maybe the subject matter of what he were talking about is connected to it, I don't know. You know, I don't know what's creating all of this. I just know that it's either one kind of phenomenon, as in a singular, that's presenting as many things, or it's lots and lots of different phenomena, and they're all using the same kind of exotic science. To interact with us. Christ, it's so hard to get your head around, isn't it?
Yeah. Now this one, I know we've talked about the weather before, but Lee Roscoe is asking, do you think the weather has something to do with a frog noise in both locations?
Could be, Lee. I mean, I'm not sure it was misty for ourselves when we heard that strange noise. However, you touch on the weather and the big grey man of Ben MacDuibh, I am fear, Lethmore, the Gaelic pronunciation. I think it sounds fabulous, that, I am fear. And fear is the thing that it creates. But let's keep in step with the fog. A lot of the stories come around fog and mist. Do you know that bit of it, that part of it can't be denied. That goes hand in hand with Ben MacDuibh. We're not all of them, but a lot of them go with the fog and the mist. The fog and the mist, I don't really think it figures with what we're dealing with up on those cliff tops, Lee. But great question, thank you.
Yeah, and let's have a look. Gary Clark. Hi, Paul. What's the safest place to park on Bempton and also Danes Dyke? So a guy in a blue 4x4 last time where we was there, so we left. That was you, wasn't it, Paul, when the 4x4? The blue 4x4?
It could have been me in blue 4x4, yeah. If that might be a bit tongue-in-cheek, Gary. Yeah, safest place to park. Well, there's no overnight parking at the RSPB, but that's safe to say. But if you're not going to stay there overnight, I mean, I can't say, oh, you can park there. I'm not the law on this, but surely that's okay. But there's the road on the way down anyway. It's a 3/4 of a mile single track road with pull-ins, so you could get on there. When we left last night, I think it was Paul Mort's there, and he were taking or potentially taking pictures of the Northern Lights. So what are you doing? So there's plenty of places to park. Danes Dyke, I wouldn't recommend parking there on a night. I really wouldn't. I went there with Jason Davis, who did the cover for Night People. Me and Jace went there and we parked our cars there. We've been there loads of times at night, but get down. On this particular night, some group of people must have stole a car and they were smashing it through trees and all sorts of things. And me and Jason were running back, hoping our cars would be intact because they were spinning around car park and just going nuts. Obviously they were intact, but it put me off parking there on a night. So if I were going to Danes Dyke, not to labour on it, I'd get somebody to drop me off, and I'd take some lights with me and whatever I needed, and just leave me there. I'd feel safer than leaving my car.
I think it's like everywhere, Paul. You get the boy races, as you just mentioned, but you probably get someone desirables up there as well. You know,
me.
And people with werewolf costumes on, Paul. Probably, I don't know.
Hey, if you'd have seen us when we were making Wolflands with them costumes on. I look like a little Oompa.
And at this point in time, if my phone hadn't have broken and I lost all the footage, would have had some. I had some good little footage of that night up there, Paul.
Yeah. Oh, jeez, it was.
Can't see it, unfortunately. So that's out. So look then.
Oh, just one thing, Les, before you put a question on. Space Cow, I see just right at the bottom of my chat. Thank you for sending us the picture, and we are going to have a look at that on Sunday. And your explanation and experience of what you saw when you managed to take that picture. So thank you.
Okay, not so much a question, but I'll put this on as an observation. Dogs don't have breasts, perhaps neither do dog persons. Can't say I'd be that curious if confronted by them.
Yeah, you make a good point.
Yeah. Tony Worrell is saying in Portsmouth there's an old saying of thieves in the fog.
Thieves in the fog. Yeah, what are they trying to steal though, Tony? Good to hear from you, mate. And you're welcome back any Sunday you want. Share a few more stories with us.
Sure thing. And yes, this one's maybe a bit smelly, Paul. Rocky Nielsen's, if you want to read that one out.
Are you sure the werefrog wasn't just one of the sneakily letting? Yeah, it could have been. Yeah, it could have been. There were 6 of us up there, and Pete's renowned for that. So you make a good point.
Well, there you go. Let's if you can spot any questions, Paul, in the chat.
Jojo's got one. The lady.
I'll throw this one on. No, let's have a look. Get there. Yes.
If werewolf means man-wolf, would a female werewolf be a what's that? Wibwolf, also taken from Germanic like were. I don't know, John, and you make a good point, and no doubt you've already looked into it. And while we're on with it, because your name's up on screen, and we need to get you on here, sharing your experiences of such things from no other place than Danes Dyke. If you feel up to it, you can go on anonymous. You obviously won't be anonymous because your name's there now, but you've no need to go on camera. That's what I'm saying, because what you had to share with me were quite astounding. So, thank you.
Okay. Let me have a look. I've got a question here from Joe. A lady told me she and her boyfriend parked in the car park at Danes Dyke in the 90s. Never again, they apparently saw a ghost move across in front of them. A man, and it was a man, and no mistaking it.
It wouldn't surprise me. You know, Joe, ghosts aren't really my thing, but I recently walked around Danes Dyke with a man and his wife who was a medium, and she claimed that there was a man crouched in the dike. We know I could say it, couldn't I? Said there's somebody there and perceive it and what have you, but she came up with some really interesting things, and it was fascinating listening to this lady talking about what she saw and perceived, and what she did speak about echoed with a medium, if that's the right word, or somebody who's receptive to these things, who was with Andrew Collins when Andrew came about 2 years ago. Andrew's the guy who wrote the book Light Quest, and you'll find Andrew on Ancient Aliens, but he brought a group of people through who were closely connected to him, and during the night I met up with them and we went around Danes Dyke, and we went to this spot. Yeah. And I don't mean exactly where this lady stood, but within like 20 yards of it, and they picked up on something not unlike what you're talking about, or not unlike what this lady spoke about a few weeks ago to me when she was with her husband. So I don't know. Ghosts are not my thing really, but it doesn't mean they don't exist.
Okay, I think we're done with the questions, Paul.
Yeah, and I see Lee's just saying that there was a big house where the car park is in Danes Dyke. Yeah, there was a huge manor house. You can see pictures of it if you look online, if you search hard enough. And there's also said to be tunnels from Danes Dyke to Bridlington Priory, which is interesting. Whether there is or not, I don't know. And the tunnels are supposed to be where the house was. Yeah. So it'd go underneath in the cellars, I would assume, of the house to the priory. And I find that bit fascinating. I'm not sure that there is tunnels, but I think it was 1956, Danes Dyke House was still standing. Yeah. And somebody wanted to buy it, I think, for about £22,000. And I think the council didn't think it was viable, so they destroyed it.
I think some of the foundations are still there, aren't they, Paul?
Oh yeah, there's still stuff there. It's a fabulous place. And you've got the stories of the White Lady that have kind of transitioned time from Danes Dyke. And then you've got, if you go into Flamborough, there's a quarry in the garden of somebody's property, very close to the village, very well in the heart of Flamborough village, but there's trees and a fence around it, so you'd never know. I did actually go there once because Bob Brown knew the man who owned it. Yeah. It's since changed hands, And literally, you just go into this guy's garden and look down, and you're in a quarry. And there's the story of Jenny Gallows there, which is a story where people are supposed to run round. I think I don't know, it was 7 times, because I think that's what it is, and saying her name, and then you evoke the ghost of Jenny Gallows. But there's lots of stories like that all over the UK, all over the world, isn't there? So, it's just one of those.
And I've just noticed,
and I see Josh Turner's in.
I was just going to say that,
Josh.
Yeah, a friend of the show and a previous guest of yours, Paul.
Absolutely, and I'd like to say now that anybody who's not looked at Paranormal Roundtable, which is Josh's YouTube channel, get onto Paranormal Roundtable. Just put a link into it, please, Josh. And sometimes when you're next going to be speaking, and this guy can talk for England or talk for America, because he's got loads to say, loads to share, and it's always good to see Josh. So thanks for giving us a bit of support there, mate. I really appreciate that.
It's 64. Do the cliff tops ever scare you? When they do, is it incredibly strange and out of place?
I've gone up there for years and years, Hazo, and like I've said previous, I'm happy now that I'm going up with a group of people, because previously I were on my own. But so I'm apologies for repeating this story, but you've asked the question, so I will do. About 5 or 6 years ago, could be longer, I were up there with Steve Ashbridge. We went to the back end of the north side of Danes Dyke, which is a 2.5 mile earthwork that cuts Flamborough Head off from the mainland. And we're returning back. It's close to midnight or just after midnight. Don't know the exact time. And a fear came over me. And that's the first time it's happened. Just like with the guy who I related to earlier at the other end of Bempton, where he had his fear experience. But it just felt like I were being watched from everywhere, which is stupid when you've got literally your 20 foot from 200 to 300 foot cliffs that are sheer down to the North Sea, and farmland on the left, there was nothing there, but the fear was overwhelming.
And is that the only time you've felt?
That's only time up there. Yeah, that's the only time. I've been frightened at loads. I won't say loads of times. I've been frightened in places. I've been frightened when I've been stood in a bar. Do you know what I mean? Because I realise something's going to kick off that's a little bit out of my control. But that's a different kind of fear.
Or you have to get your wallet out. It's
I'm always frightened when I get my wallet out. Yeah. No, this fear, what he's always relating to, and what the guy on the cliff tops recently with us is relating to, and I think what other people feel, and some of the stories such as Josh will have collected, and other people. It's primal. It goes deeper than that, because you don't know where it comes from, and there's almost a wall that you walk into and you enter it, and you either go back and retreat, or you walk through it, and it does lift.
So is this when you get all the goosebumps and shivers and your spine?
Yeah, and I'm not talking about it, Ezo, with any experience. I'm talking about it that I have experienced that fear up there just once, and it was frightening. And I'm kind of put off going up there quite a bit now on my own. I really am. Yeah.
But as you said, there's plenty of people who go up there now with and they're quite the regulars, aren't they?
Yeah, they're regulars, and they're just as interested as in this phenomena as what I am. Just because I'm sat here doing the Truth Proof live stream means nothing, because everybody in the chat, everybody who listens to this after tonight, they're just as interested, and you're all looking for pieces of your own puzzle, just trying to make sense of what you've seen and experienced, because a lot of the time none of us ever, we probably take this stuff to the grave, because I don't have an answer to it.
Right, you've got a minute to advertise all your wares, Paul, if you could do that.
Excellent. Yeah, well, obviously, as I always say, well, I would do if I could see it, and I can't see it. Oh, there we go. If you want to buy the hard copy of Wolflands, then contact myself, truthproof.uk, and you can also obtain the version of Wolflands via Amazon Prime if you want to download that. And the books are available truthproof.uk or on eBay. And basically, as always, thank you very much for giving us your time tonight, and we shall see you next week.
Yeah, and no, we'll see you on Sunday, won't we?
We'll see you on Sunday.
Yeah, and then photos will be forthcoming.
Yeah, we'll get the photos. You know, it would just ironic, really, that somebody said, "Oh, you said you'd show photos," and as usual, you didn't. That weren't the case. We were waiting for the person who'd sent them to give us the green light. So we've got the green light. It's not the smoking gun of ufology, but it's an interesting photograph. And thank you.
On that note, thanks for all the monetary support. Thanks, Alison, for doing the moderating, and thanks to you all for being on the stream. And as Paul said, we'll see you on Sunday.
Thank you, and thank you, everyone. And drag